Hello and welcome to our guide for Norushen, the third boss in the Siege of Orgrimmar. To begin with, it should be noted that you never fight Norushen, who is actually friendly to your raid. Instead, you fight a boss called the Amalgam of Corruption. As the fight begins, all players receive a corruption resource, and they start out with 75 corruption. The more corruption a player has, the less damage they deal to the Amalgam of Corruption, and since the fight has a 7-minute enrage timer, getting rid of your corruption, or becoming purified as it is called in-game, is essential. Healers who become purified received increased healing, and purified tanks take less damage. In order for a player to become purified, they must complete a test, which happens in a different realm from the one where the rest of the raid is fighting the boss. Tanks, healers, and DPS players each have different tests to complete. You can see the DPS test here, which consists of killing several adds while avoiding as much damage as possible. The small adds regularly put up shields in front of them, so they must be attacked from behind, and the large add has a frontal cone attack. Killing a small add removes 15 corruption, and killing the large add removes 40. Once your corruption reaches 0, you are immediately sent back to the rest of the raid. Healers have to stay alive and heal 3 friendly NPCs while they kill an add. Tanks have to survive for 1 minute inside this realm, avoiding or interrupting all the abilities used against them. In the normal realm, your raid will have to fight the Amalgam of Corruption and a number of adds. Basically, each time an add is killed inside a DPS player's test realm, it respawns out in the normal realm with different abilities. The small adds, called Unleashed Essences of Corruption, channel a beam into the Amalgam, buffing it. This beam can be intercepted by raid members, preventing the Amalgam from being buffed, but damaging them in the process. This is something that your raid members will need to do every time a small add is alive. The large adds are called Unleashed Manifestations of Corruption. They deal constant raid-wide damage while they are alive, and when they die, they leave behind a small void zone called Residual Corruption. As long as this void zone is active, it deals high raid-wide damage, and in order to remove it, a player with no more than 75 corruption must stand in it. Doing so grants that player 25 corruption and despawns the void zone. Let's look at the Amalgam of Corruption's 5 abilities before we go into the general strategy for this fight. Unleashed Anger is a very damaging tank attack, and Self-Doubt is a stacking tank debuff that increases the damage of Unleashed Anger and which requires a tank switch. Icy Fear is a raid-wide damaging aura that ticks every 3 seconds for the entire fight and deals more damage the lower the Amalgam's health is. Blind Hatred creates a cutter beam that links the boss to the edge of the room and which moves around slowly, basically killing anyone it comes in contact with. You need to always be mindful of where this cutter is and move away from it. Finally, the boss summons an Unleashed Manifestation of Corruption when it reaches 50% health, and then again for every 10% of its health that it loses after that. So there are 2 main constraints for your raid. The first is that you need to have most, if not all, of your DPS players purified in order to beat the enrage timer. The other is that you need to have your tanks constantly getting purified so that they can despawn residual corruption void zones throughout the fight. The maximum number of players that can be inside test realms at the same time is 2 in 10 man and 5 in 25 man. You will want to have your DPS players purified as the fight goes on, all the while sending in the tank not currently tanking the Amalgam in to get purified. There is no need to have your healers purified. You'll have to come up with a specific player rotation on your own. For the rest of the raid, the strategy is pretty simple. DPS the Amalgam of Corruption, tank the adds and DPS them with priority, Unleashed Manifestations of Corruption first and then the essences, and move out of the way of the cutter beam. Save Heroism or Bloodlust for when the Amalgam reaches 30% health or so, and kill the Unleashed Manifestations of Corruption right up to the end, including the one that spawns when the Amalgam is at 10% health. For a more detailed and constantly updated written version of this guide, go to the link in the description. Thank you for watching.